Good evening and welcome. I'm Sheila Balgobin and I am the Dream Decipherer, and I help you to crack the code of your sleep and dreams so you can sleep sound and dream deep. This evening is part two of my triple header with regard to two sets of dreams. They were just too many to be gone through all at once. So last week I did the first set of dreams, and today I'll be doing the second set. The next week I will actually tie it all together so that you can see what the relationship is between the first set of dreams and the second set. But for now, on to the second set of dreams. The in the first in part one of this dream, the dreamer reports that he was at his son's school, observing the son's class, or observing the school in general is not clear. The son was taking a test at the time, and the dreamer noticed that um, the son was smaller than the other kids in the class. Now, the dreamer's second son was a baby and was sleeping in a car seat, a removable car seat, and with a little hood pulled over his head. From there, the dreamer reports that the dreamer was sitting at a table with a group of teachers, and while someone was saying a prayer, one young teacher was acting in a way that was the dreamer considered disrespectful, and he frowned at this teacher. After this prayer and whatever activity that followed ended, this same young teacher that was acting disrespectfully in some way during the prayer went to the dreamer and asked him, reaching out to a medallion that was out around his neck, and asked to what was it in an attempt to actually touch it. And the dreamer pushed his hand away and said, it's a pagua, and you don't need to touch it. Now, at this point, the other teachers who had been sitting with the dreamer smiled and appeared to be happy that this young teacher had been put in his place. And that's the end of the first dream. The second dream doesn't involve people directly, but the dreamer was in a multi-story building which was being refurbished ahead of some kind of sports competition. So all of the bathroom facilities like toilets, showers, etc., were being replaced. And that's the end of that dream. The final dream, the dreamer reports that the dreamer was accompanied by his wife and some other people, numbers and names and things not mentioned, that they were going to be watching a film. And the film that the dreamer had chosen was a comedy called Cats and Dogs. Now, for some reason, a gentleman, an older Black man in his 50s, apparently was not very impressed with the dreamer's choice of film. And the dreamer asked him, well, what do you suggest we watch? And the dream ends there. So what's going on here? We have the dreamer observing in one dream and getting upset with somebody. We have a building being renovated, all of the plumbing being renovated. And then there's a slight disagreement over watching a film. How were they all tied together? Well, we'll see, hopefully, by the end of this. In the first part of the first dream, the dreamer had gone to his older child's school to observe with his infant son in a portable car seat. My question here was, what was being observed? Was it just like an open day where parents and others can come in and see what's going on? Is the dreamer a school governor, responsible for the um, running, in a sense, of the school? Why was the dreamer there observing? There also there's also the question, in waking life, are there any issues with regard to children's schooling or anything like that? I know there have been lots of issues due to lockdown, and people having to homeschool and do all kinds of crazy things to keep their kids educated. And I just wonder if that may be a factor in what's going on in this particular dream. But there's also another way to look at this particular dream, and buildings generally, not always, but generally represent some aspect of our lives, like houses. They represent our inner life, if you will, the our domestic life. And I just wonder if, at some level, the dreamer feels that they're back at school or in learning mode of some kind, or maybe just learning life's lessons at the moment. It's quite significant that the dreamer was actually in a school, a place of learning. Um, Now, the two children, one a young boy and the other one an infant, I also would ask if they represent some aspect, a younger or less developed or unacknowledged part of the dreamer. They Our shadow is usually the same sex as the dreamer, um, but they don't necessarily correlate in terms of age. The shadow can be at all kinds of ages and all kinds of states. But I would put that out there for the dreamer to consider, that these two boys are not necessarily themselves, as I always say. The people in our dreams are not necessarily themselves, but what do they represent, and what about them resonates for the dreamer? Now, the oldest son, the dreamer noticed that the during this test that the child was taking, that his older son was smaller than the other children in the class. And I just ask here, what is this about size? I mean, quite frankly, men do have an obsession about size, and women too. But what is the significance here of the boy being smaller than the other children? And also, it's interesting that you also mentioned that the younger child, the baby, was asleep in a car seat with a hood over his head. What significance, if any, does that hood have for this child? I mean, is it just a head covering? If it's significant enough for you to mention it, there must be a reason for it. So I would ask, what significance does that hood on that child's head have for the dreamer? Next, we have a look at the teachers. The dreamer reports they're sitting at a table with a bunch of teachers, several teachers. And my first question here is, were these people known to the dreamer, whether in the dream or in waking life? Were these people known to the dreamer? There's also an image or thought that came into mind when I read this, and it was a biblical reference, actually, where you had this you had a 12-year old, a child, Jesus, speaking with elders and scholars at in the synagogue. Now, I wonder if here, if we're looking at something that um, almost messianic, I would say. The other image that popped up in my head was that it was reminiscent of the Last Supper, where you have Jesus sitting around with a bunch of his disciples. And I would put out there seems to be a theme, or messianic kind of theme here. And I wonder, is the dreamer's picturing himself, whether in his dream or in some place in his life, as someone or something saving someone, being a savior. Now, further along in that theme, you have this young teacher who is being disrespectful during while a prayer is being said. What the nature of being disrespectful was he talking? Was he whatever? But apparently his behavior was not appropriate for the moment. And the dreamer showed his irritation by frowning at this young teacher. Now, when the same young teacher tried to transgress even further by trying to touch the pendant that was around the dreamer's neck, the dreamer actually more or less batted his hand away and said for him not to touch it. It has nothing to do with him. And the other teachers approved. They were showed happiness or satisfaction at the fact that the dreamer actually told this young teacher off. And there's several questions that come to mind here. And one is, what is the significance of this medallion? And the phrase protecting one's own actually came into mind, and not just about looking after and protecting his children, but this medallion, which is equally precious apparently to the dreamer. And again, the question is why. The other thing that was perplexing was, why were the teachers expressing pleasure at this young teacher being told off, but the dreamer doesn't express the satisfaction? It's the teachers that do. And I just wonder if there's a bit of a displaced feelings here. They're being projected onto someone else instead of being experienced or talked about directly by the dreamer. There seems to be a bit of displacement actually going on here. The only time the dreamer actually showed irritation was when this teacher was frowning during the prayer. But you would think that, I got my own back and feel a bit of satisfaction that he told him off. It's not him who expresses the satisfaction, it's the other teachers. And I wonder why that is. Now, a funny little thing that I noticed is that the dreamer actually brushed away the teacher's hand when he went to touch the medallion that the dreamer was wearing. And what came into my mind was almost like somebody doing a martial arts block and just sweeping the hand or blocking the hand from coming near. It's very defensive posture to take. But it was almost automatic. I mean, as soon as the guy came right, the arm went up. And I just wonder if there are times or places where the dreamer feels almost under attack and a bit defensive. And perhaps that's something to be looked at. Now, in the next dream, the dreamer is supposedly on his own in a multi-story building, which was actually being refurbished. All the all of the plumbing, indoor plumbing, showers, sinks, etc., were being replaced in preparation for a sports event. Now, I wonder, with the upcoming Olympics in Tokyo, may have had some influence on this one. But there's also the issue of things opening up more and more, at least here in the UK, in lockdown easing and people being able to get out and associate with one another, particularly at matches and things like soccer matches or whatever. people are able to start to mingle a bit more. And I wonder if this may be a oblique reference to that. But there's um, there's another thing about this, that it could be a possible play on words, which the unconscious mind will use to get our attention. And the indoor plumbing in this multi-story building was being refurbished. So all the old plumbing was being thrown out, new stuff being brought in. And I wonder if this inner work that's being done, this inner plumbing work, is reflects in some way some inner workings or inner shiftings that are going on with the dreamer, whether literally in the literal sense or in more in a metaphorical sense, that there's some internal work being done at the moment. There's also, when we look at the third dream, the dreamer is states that he is with his wife and others, and they've decided to watch this comedy film called Cats and Dogs. Now, my first question here is, who are these others? Are there other couples, or just a random bunch of people? They're obviously, if you're watching a movie together, they're friends, but they're not named. We don't know how many, but they're just called others, just kind of this amorphous group. But who are these others? What do they signify in the life of the dreamer, whether in the dream or in waking life? Are these people actually known to the dreamer in waking life? And again, you have to remember that the people in the dream don't aren't necessarily who they are. They represent some aspect of the dreamer. Now, looking at this film, the dreamer chose a comedy for everyone to watch, but one person objected. Now, my first question here is this man known to the dreamer, whether we're in the dream or in real life? Was it someone that he was familiar with, had conversations with, had contact with? And what is significant about this man that he was singled out, other than the dreamer's wife and children? The only other person that's actually singled out in any way is this older Black man. So my question here is, why was this man important enough to be named to a certain extent in the dream, and why was his opinion so important that it was enough to go against, well, or possibly go against all of the majority? Everybody else wanted to watch this film, but this one person didn't. So why was his opinion so important that you were willing to even shift what you were going to do in favor of what this person may have suggested? My other question is, the dream ended, but did the man actually suggest a film, even though the dream ended? But I just wonder, if was a film ever suggested? And out of curiosity, what do you think the man wanted to watch? Just as a random guess, what do you believe the man may have wanted to watch? Whew, lots going on here, and not it wasn't readily clear what the connections were. It took me a while to kind of work it out, but this is what I believe the links to be, and the only person who can confirm or deny that is the dreamer himself, because it's not my dream. I can only pick up clues, but who has to make sure that the pieces fit and resonate with the dreamer? And when something resonates, when you've got the understanding of a dream, it's almost like it clicks in your head, and it's like, oh yeah, that's it. So although I can provide clues, in the end, who ends up understanding the meaning of the dream for the dreamer is the dreamer, him or her or herself. Now, the going back to the links, the in dream one, there was an almost adversarial or aggressive attitude being exhibited by the dreamer, particularly towards this young teacher. Um, in but there's two confrontations, but sandwiched in between there's some readjusting or refurbishing going on. So it's like a sandwich. You have this more kind of confrontation or um, episode in the first dream. Then there's some retooling or replumbing going on, so that there's new stuff coming in and old stuff going out. Pretty appropriate that it was toilets also being refurbished, so a lot of garbage being gotten rid of, so to speak. And you have another confrontation in the third dream, but this one, despite the cats and dogs reference, was a non-confrontational confrontation, if you can get that oxymoron. But despite there being some kind of difference of opinion or a difference of point of view or behavior, instead of the dreamer becoming more aggressive in his response, after this retooling episode in between, he actually tries to dialogue with the person to find out, well, if you don't like that, then what do you like? What would you suggest? So there has been a ratcheting down, or draining away, if you will, of that heated energy, that confrontational energy, into something that was much more um, collegial, for lack of a better word. Um, and I wonder here if the series of dreams is showing that there's a process that's actually going on for the dreamer, perhaps with regard to certain behaviors or ways of thinking or being. And that is being evidenced by this kind of before and after, with a bit in between, to kind of clear the energy and reset the story, from with a new beginning. But those are things that only the dreamer can determine. But I think there's something there, because they're showing a definite shifting going on. And I would ask the dreamer to consider, where in their life is there a shift going on, or could there be a shift going on? So that's it for more of a cheap entertainment. We have cheap entertainment and martial arts symbols and all kinds of things. But in the third and final episode of this, I'm going to tie these two sets of dreams together from the last 2 weeks, and see what the overarching message is, because all of these dreams were actually dreamt in one night, 7 dreams. So we would have all imploded if I tried to go through all of that at one time. But next week, I'll tie it all together and we'll find out what all 7 dreams were trying to communicate to the dreamer. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Have a great evening and rest of the week. And I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.